My guest at this time is a former ROH World TV and Tag Team Champion. He's also one of the panelists in the newly debuted ROH Roundtables. It's Kenny King. Kenny, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thanks, Nick, for having me, man.
First of all, how'd you guys pick Riccaboni to host this thing? I was like very surprised. Like, how did he get the nod?
You know, a lot of people don't know this, but amongst the brothers, you know, Riccaboni's name is Ricky Bones. So, you know, so, you know, but Ian is he's a very intelligent guy, and he's you know, he's more or less the voice of Ring of Honor, and it kind of felt natural for Ian to be the facilitator, to be the person to kind of you know, help kind of move things along, because, you know, and I think a lot of our fan base is very comfortable with Ian. They trust Ian. Ian is somebody who's been outspoken on various causes and various, you know, different issues is the word, right? So, you know, so a lot of people trust Ian, and I think Ian, it was a good neutral place to start.
Cool, man. Well, how did you and ROH decide to do these roundtables discussing race? How did this come about?
Well, I gotta give ROH, you know, 100% their complete credit. You know, it was them who broached the subject. I think it was after we had a Zoom meeting, and I had gotten a email, I think, from Kevin Eck, who's one of our contributing writers, and did some stuff behind the scenes, and let me know that you know, the powers that be were interested in doing something like that, having a round table about, you know, the issues of the day, and they thought that myself, Shane, and Caprice would be great for it. And you know, initially they were like, well, what do you think that we should do? Should we do it in, like, you know, a taped form, a podcast, a video? And we were all immediately like, Zoom. You know, we wanted it to be a situation where everybody could be kind of live and unfiltered, and give their honest opinion.
Yeah, man. Well, it's incredibly candid. It's nothing. I've never seen anything in pro wrestling like it. Honestly, I started my day watching it, and I mean, it's just, the curtain is burned. You know, this is a very frank conversation amongst a group of men. And, you know, what did it mean for you to have ROH greenlight this and, like, encourage you guys to talk about these subjects? It feels very different than every other wrestling promotion out there right now. Well,
you know, it just reinforced kind of what myself and the ROH locker room already knows. Like, Ring of Honor, you know, and Sinclair, they are fully invested in us, not only as wrestlers, not as just toy products, but as people, who we are, what we do, our families. You know, Joe Koff, Greg, they've proven time and time again that they are interested in us for who we are. And it just meant a lot to me, man, to not have to go to wonder, you know, oh man, you know, these guys they don't care, they don't think about us, or any of those things that may come into mind. It meant a lot for me, not only just for them to say, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, let's have all of our black men, all of our stars who have an outlet, a point of view on this, and let's get them together and let's have them rap, and let's to the fact that they were just so, I mean, there was literally nothing. There was nothing that they said we couldn't talk about. There was nothing that there was no subject taboo. They said, go as you absolutely want. So there were they put no restraints on us. And I think that is just a reflection, continued reflection of Ring of Honor.
Yeah, man. And, you know, I saw John and Gresham was a part of this, right? And Jay as well. You know, I've been told recently that Gresham has stepped up more as a leader in the ROH locker room. Is that true? I mean, like, can you talk a little bit about Gresham's influence right now with Ring of Honor?
Well, Gresh is not a rookie, man. Gresh has been around a long time. I worked FIP shows in like 2008 when John Gresham was still wrestling as John Davis, right? So Gresh has been around. Gresh is a guy who, and initially it was supposed to be myself, Caprice, and Shane.
Right.
But the more we talked about it, we would be absolutely remiss if we didn't include Jay Lethal, who was Kofi Kingston before Kofi Kingston. Let's call it real, right? And then, you know, Jonathan Gresham, who is on that level, who has been grinding for as long, who people may not be as familiar with. So to your question, yeah, Gresh has just, I mean, I wouldn't say stepped up, but he stepped into his role, right? Everybody, he is universally recognized as an amazing pro wrestler, and people are now starting to hear his voice as a leader. And, you know, it's just as strong.
Yeah. And you can real quickly, I thought that was a really interesting comment. Can you explain or extrapolate a little bit more on what you mean by how Jay was Kofi Kingston before Kofi Kingston?
Well, Jay Lethal was a world champion, was Ring of Honor world champion in, I don't know, 2011, maybe
Yeah.
2012, right? And he
Yep.
was a double champ, right? He held both at the top singles championships. So what I mean by that is, when people justly give Kofi his due for being the first Black, world champion in World Wrestling Entertainment history, and that's a huge, huge thing in of itself.
Right.
Jay Lethal was doing it in Ring of Honor. I wouldn't say it a little fanfare, right? But it was to less fanfare as Kofi Kingston got one. And it's just as, Ring of Honor's never had an issue with that. Xavier was the first Ring of Honor world champion, and I think Xavier's Puerto Rican, or he's someone of color. So it's not a situation where we've had to go back years in the history books to find anything like that. It's always kind of been the culture.
Yeah, man. What are you hoping to accomplish with these roundtables? What are you and the rest of the guys hoping comes of doing these sessions?
Well, one of the most important things that I thought that we did was we asked questions. We had people, ask questions that you would be maybe too afraid to ask in person, or somebody that you know in person, and send it to whoever was moderating this. And we wanted to hear them all, because these are questions that everyday people have, that shape the way they think and shape the way they look at things. And a lot of this is based off of, not real information or something that they heard. And so that was the number one thing for me. I wanted to get people's, number one, ask a Black dude questions, and let's get it out on the table. Let's talk about Black on Black crime. Let's talk about, the Confederate flag. Let's talk about things because when we get those things on the table and we talk about them and we really, really iron them out, then we can move forward. Then we stop with preconceived notions. Then we stop with, well, I heard this, or well, I always thought this. And then you can say, okay, well, this is what I'm saying. So now you can hear it from me. And now we can move forward in that direction.
Do you feel like there's a genuine conversation being held right now in the United States? Do you think that this conversation is finally starting to be heard, or do you think it's a lot more noise than substance right now?
No, I honestly believe that it's more genuine now than it was a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
A few years ago, 2016, 2015, when, the phrase Black Lives Matter came out, there was the visceral reaction to it. It was, oh my God. And people took it as an argument. They took it as an affront to their own self. And this time around, you're seeing a whole lot more people that don't take so much offense to that actually see it for what the actual slogan, what the phrase, what the movement actually means. And so, you're seeing from everywhere from Disney to Apex Legends, FIFA. You turn on any sort of media, you see the words Black Lives Matter, which 4 years ago that was not the case. Yeah. So I feel that even though there is still loads of white noise and still loads of opposition, I feel like the percentages have swayed, and a lot of people have stopped being so offended and has taken the time to listen and have been like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I can get down with that. And that's why, we're seeing it be a little bit more well received this time around.
It's crazy, man. I watched that there was a clip from the Washington Nationals game yesterday, and every single baseball player on both teams all taking a knee. I mean, 18 months ago, it would have never, and it's insane to just see how quickly it's all, attitudes are changing. I mean, how is this affecting you right now, Kenny, to have all this happen so quickly and all at once?
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, I'm interested in real change. So I don't give a damn about Aunt Jemima. I don't care about, these surface shows of nothingness, honestly, is what it is to me. Like it's great that people that it is being more acknowledged in our subconscious, in our collective culture is not so abrasive to it, but I still need, it would be a nice time to say, arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor, right? This would be a good time to say that. I think things like that, where you are starting to see incremental change, right? I have one of my good friends I went to college with is, he's a lieutenant with the St. Pete Police Department.
Okay.
And I saw something where they said St. Pete PD is now going to start, I don't want to butcher this, but basically not sending police officers to things that are not life-threatening, right? Like,
Right.
mental health, suicide, things that, in a lot of these cases, because people are, behaving erratically and police officers don't have the training to deal with that, then sometimes police officers can escalate a situation that because they don't have the training. And when I spoke to my friend about this, like, what do you think? Just based off of, what's going on, and we haven't really even spoke at length about it. And he said, you'd be surprised how many police officers are down for this. We've been spread thin, and we have been assigned to things that we have no training for, but we're the garbage guys. We're the all clean all, and this is something that everybody in the department is behind. So things like that, which, when you get into conversations like defund the police, I don't think anybody wants to defund the police. But when it comes to things like, why are police dispatched to suicides, right? Where there's mental health issues, the things that are, when there's violent crime and things like that, absolutely, that's what we need them for. But if you can see how many things have been escalated due to an armed presence, when maybe it didn't need to, how many things could have went left when it should have just went right. I think that's the thinking that's come from all this. People are starting to say, well, damn, what is the path that we can take, rather than always sending armed response to everything to see and hoping that things de-escalate.
Yeah, no, antagonizing the crowds has really been an issue as of late. I agree with you on that, How do you feel pro wrestling fits into the grand scheme of this? I think it's interesting having you all together to have this conversation right now. We talk about the police, we talk about governments and things like that, but what role do you think pro wrestling can play to kind of help heal the divide or continue the conversation right now, I guess?
Well, I think, and it's part of the round table. And I say this in the round table, and I'll say it again. It's a conversation I had with Vince Russo about, Black talent, and he asked me, why do you feel, there's been a lack of top tier Black talent? And I said, the figure goes directly at you, Vince. It's people like yourself who write the shows, and you only write Black talent from your perspective, which is either gangsters or hustlers or pimps or these these caricatures, right? When you look at Triple H, you look at Randy Orton, these are three-dimensional, fully fleshed out characters. Triple H can be the cerebral assassin, he can be the game, he can be all these different things, which allows you to say, well, damn, Triple H can be this main event talent because look how many layers he has. When you look at R-Truth, who raps and and now if you know Ron Killings, like I know Ron Killings has multiple layers, right? There's multiple more interesting things about Ron Killing than R-Truth, the rapper dapper guy. But we don't ever get to see that. We don't get to connect with Ron on that level that we need to connect with a world champion. We have to connect emotionally. I have to, want to care for your well-being if I want to see you as a world champion, or vice versa. It depends on how it sits. But if you're not fully fleshed out, if I haven't been allowed to show you all the things about myself that you need to care about me or hate me, then that's why these things fall flat. So where pro wrestling can continue the bridge in the conversation is in that case, right? And they've done it in certain cases, but like, why is Titus O'Neil's he's a wonderful father and he's this wonderful family man, but that's just his off-camera persona, right? That, all these other things. Let's start giving just more detail and depth, I think, and pro wrestling can. And I think when you get away from, and this is not just Black people, right? Like, Hispanics are stereotyped as essays, and and Asians are always kung fu masters and all this same nonsense that happens over and over and over. So if we can just give these people characters, like this is Ron and he raps, but he also does this and he's also this other stuff, then I think wrestling kind of mimics society. So if we stop seeing Black people as gangsters and thugs in wrestling culture, then maybe we'll stop seeing as gangsters and thugs in regular culture. It just, all of this kind of subliminal messaging, it just all kind of bounces off one another.
Man, you talk about Ron Killings, man. Him and Ric Flair shared TV space a couple weeks ago, and I was like, wow, look, 2 NWA World Heavyweight Champions right there, like the greatest of all times. And like I think there's a whole generation that doesn't even realize that about Ron Killings, Right. How is racial inequality and, how has this affected your journey? Kenny? I mean, to this point, like how have these issues affected you personally when it comes to the pro wrestling business?
Well, I think you know, one of the ways that it affected me when I was breaking in and coming up was, you know, there was only certain spots for, you know, there's only so many spots for Black guys on the rosters, and there's certainly only certain mid to high level spots. So that would be honestly, like when I choose where I would want to go to work or where I would think about what it is I want to do, I would have to see, okay, who's there? Is there a spot for me there, or is there already another top Black guy there? Okay, there is. So maybe I'd probably be pushed to the side, or what's that look like, or is it who's here, or is someone else there? Because if not, I also just don't want to get tagged together because we're two Black guys and we look the same, we do the same. You know what I mean? So I wrestled in almost every state. You know what I mean? I've been called every name in the book as a bad guy. You know, and none of that is whatever. That's my job, right? But it's the nuanced where it's okay. Well, you know, you can't have too many. There was a joke that we always used to have, and it was when me, Bobby Lashley, MVP, D'Lo, and who else? Somebody else, and we'd all kind of be standing around backstage at TNA,
Yeah.
and you know, if there's four of us, and one of us will come over and say, "Hey, man, we can't stand around and congregate. We don't want Dixie to know there's this many of us employed, right?" So these are inside jokes that nobody would ever know, right? But they're low key jokes, low key serious to us because, you know, we at that stage, every one of us has kind of looked around and said, "Damn, okay, it's either only me or there's only someone else that looks like me," and a lot of other, you know, my white counterparts have never actually even had to feel that way. So it's just nuanced, right? A lot of racial inequality is nuanced.
Yeah, man.
It's the way that it was before.
You're also a father, Kenny. How is it for you coping with having your kids in this environment, having to have that talk with your children about dealing with the police, and on top of that stress, also like there's a pandemic going on, like the stress of like worrying about sending them to school. Like, how do you deal with all of these pressures right now as a parent?
It's tough, right? Because the talk is generational, and you only realize that when you have kids. So and really you realize it when I think in the beginning of the pandemic, I went documentary crazy, and you know, I went and realized that we do this in America every 7 or 8 years or so, where something happens due to racial inequality, then there's something that supposedly happens, you know, justice-wise, and the justice system falls apart and shit starts burning. So it happens. It is a rotating circle going back to, I mean, you go back to the Tulsa race riots in 1921, but I think that started in 1968 with LA with the Watts riots, right? And it's always surrounding the same level of things. So I said that just to say that it's a little depressing, right? And real talk, nobody wants to have to say Black Lives Matter, right? It's not something that Black people are walking around having with a chip on their shoulder and that we want to say, right? It's almost a little embarrassing to have to continue to remind people that this is a real thing, you know, in 2020. So to have to kind of tell my son and my daughter what to watch out for, and you know, and worry when they leave the house, and not to mention, right, there's a pandemic, and nobody really knows what the hell's going on with that either. So, you know, they look to us for information, they look for us for leadership, and if the leadership I depend on is lousy, then, you know, it's hard. It's hard to have kids and keep them safe and keep their confidence when there's so many things in flux. And there's so many things that just kind of continue to happen, and you want to tell them that, well, you know, things are getting better, and some things are getting better, but, you know, some things are remaining the same, which is why we keep bumping our head on the same wall.
Yeah, man. Well, while I have you here to wrap it up, Kenny, I got kind of a non-race roundtable topic I'd like to bring up. I don't think I've talked to you in about a year or so, and I was in Madison Square Garden when you won that Honor Rumble. It was the first, I believe it was the first match of the show. It was the first show in over 80 years. It was not a WWE show in Madison Square Garden. What was that like for you, man, to get to have that moment in Madison Square Garden and get that big win?
it's the moment in my career so far, right? Like I grew up in New York City, and I remember my dad taking me to Madison Square Garden to watch. I remember watching, I think it was Macho Man versus Honky Tonk Man was like my favorite match, right? Because I was a big Macho Man fan, right? And
Okay.
just when they said we might be running Madison Square Garden, I felt a certain way. And then just, boom, it happened. And then we sold it out the same day. And it just, it didn't feel surreal. It was still surreal up until when I broke the curtain, right? And then being, not only having all of those things happen, being one of 3 people in the ring, and the other 2 people are the great Muda, or the not so great Muda, because he spit that crap in my eyes. But the not so great Muda and Jushin Thunder Liger, like that's 10-year-old Kenny could have died right there and been just fine. So it's still something that when I look at pictures and I look back, like I can't even believe that's me and I'm doing it.
Dude, Kenny, that was so cool, dude. I was so happy for you, man. I was sitting there in my little chair and I was like, woo! So anyway, dude, I
probably wanted the entire building else was booing. So
I was very happy for you, Kenny. I'll never forget. I guess I'll bring it back up. I brought it up before, but the Vegas thing that happened, and on your Twitter timeline and everything, and I went and checked your timeline. You said you're going to that festival. And from that moment on, I was just like, Kenny King means something to me. I thought you were like gone for a moment there. It was very, very scary.
It was close. It wasn't close, but I was close to going. And, that's just one of those things. Like you never know.
Yeah, dude. Well, let's not go back down that rabbit hole. I've talked to you before about it. So anyway, Kenny, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it. I think it is wonderful what you guys are doing over at ROH with these roundtables right now. Can we expect more? How regularly are these going to happen here now?
I think we can definitely expect more. This one was real well received. I don't have a timetable on the green light on the next one, but I can guarantee you that probably in the next month or so we'll be filming another one.
Yeah.
We all throw. I don't know how we're going to do it on the rotation or the subject matter, but I throw my head in there as being somebody who's always interested in doing it. So
awesome, dude. Awesome. And anything else that you want to plug, promote, put over here before we wrap it up today?
Oh, man, just check me out. All my social medias are the same. Kenny King, or at Kenny King PB2. At Kenny King PB2 on Instagram, on Twitter. I'm on this new TikTok thing. I'm trying to make TikTok videos and become cool with the kids, but I keep finding myself on old people TikTok. So we'll see how it goes.